The sun had barely crept above the horizon when the first sirens wailed down Maplewood Drive, splitting the morning hush with an accusation more savage than any words Karen ever spat at me. I'd watched her strut across my lawn the day before, fat lip curled in superiority as she pointed at my daughter's silent smile and proclaimed her a danger to the entire neighborhood. My heart had cracked then, a brittle thing fractured by her entitlement, but it shattered completely when I saw the police cruiser idling outside my front gate as though waiting for a monster. I sprinted through the damp grass, every step fueled by rage and love, determined to shield my little girl from this twisted spectacle. When the officers stepped from their car, I saw disbelief flash in their eyes as they recognized Cassie's gentle stare, eyes full of wonder, lips curled and a shy grin, no threat in sight. But Karen's version of events had already taken root. My daughter, she'd insisted, had been crazed, scaring children, and unhinged. I could almost taste the bile in my throat as I demanded the 911 tape, the witness statements, the proof of this outrageous claim. Under fluorescent lights at the precinct, Karen's composure cracked for the first time, her polished teeth exposing an edge of panic, when I opened my laptop and played her own words back to her, recorded by a neighbor fed up with her reign. In that moment, the truth pierced the spell she'd woven around this sleepy street, and she wilted, an empress deposed. Reeling from the humiliation, Karen's next move was desperation incarnate. She called for a meeting of the HOA board, weaving a tale of public safety and child endangerment, hoping to rally those envious of my backyard ramp into her crusade. But I'd already rallied allies stronger than fear. Mothers who'd shared morning walks with Cassie, neighbors who'd watched her water her miniature garden, and the teacher who'd sat beside her at summer camp, marveling at her unspoken kindness. They stood with me as I filed suit against Karen's board for defamation, emotional distress, and abuse of HOA power, a charge that reverberated through local headlines and community forums faster than any gossip Karen had ever spread. In court, her smug grin returned briefly, until the evidence unfurled like a banner. Text messages between her and a fellow board member plotting to use Cassie's condition as leverage, photos of her rehearsing accusations in front of the mirror, and the shaky voice memo in which she confessed she envied my life and sought to ruin it. The jury watched in stunned silence as I described how Cassie's world was quieter by design, how her laughter came in little squeals of delight, how she communicated volumes without a single word. They saw the twisted greed behind Karen's performance, and the pain etched in the fine lines around her eyes, lines carved by falsehoods and malice. When the gavel fell, it felt as though the earth shuddered, and I knew this victory was more than personal. It was a reckoning for every parent whose child had ever been labeled other by someone too shallow to understand. As the judge read the verdict in favor of my daughter and me, Karen's board was dissolved, her authority stripped away, and I felt the weight of justice settle in my chest like a warm promise. Now, as I walk Cassie hand in hand beneath the canopy of maple and oak, her silent joy shining brighter than any noise, I wonder what comes next for Karen, and I hope it's a reckoning as full and final as the one she helped orchestrate here. What do you think? Was this victory justice served, or a harsh lesson in power abused? Share your thoughts below. And as the courtroom emptied and the last of the journalists packed away their recorders, I realized that this battle was never just about vindication, it was about reclaiming our family's dignity and forcing a community to confront its own cruelty. In the days that followed, neighbors approached me in hushed tones, their eyes brimming with remorse. Mrs. Patel, whose son Paul had once stood transfixed by Cassie's gentle curiosity over the fence, apologized for her earlier silence. She admitted she'd feared speaking up against Karen, worried that any dissent might make her the next target of spiteful gossip. Mr. Lopez, whose teenage daughter Ava had once laughed openly with Cassie at the playground, confessed that he regretted not challenging Karen's accusations the moment he heard them. Their contrition reminded me that fear can be as powerful as malice, and that breaking its grip required more than a verdict. It demanded a collective reckoning. Within a week, the dissolved HOA board was replaced by a provisional committee that included my voice alongside those of my staunchest allies. We drafted a new code of conduct emphasizing empathy, inclusion, and respect for differences. When presented at the neighborhood town hall, the proposal passed unanimously. As chair of that committee, I watched often as Cassie toddled through our newly designated sensory garden, petals brushing her hair as she reached out in quiet wonder, reminding everyone that beauty and humanity thrives in stillness. The local council took notice of our reforms, and invited me to speak at a county conference on the perils of unchecked entitlement. Under bright stage lights, I described how one woman's envy had ignited a chain reaction of fear and division, and how a community's courage to stand up to cruelty could heal far deeper wounds than any lawsuit could. Journalists framed my remarks as a blueprint for neighborhoods across the state, proof that vigilance, compassion, and solidarity can topple the most entrenched bullies. Yet in the midst of our triumph, an unexpected twist emerged. Karen filed an appeal, claiming that her actions had been misconstrued and that she, too, was a mother driven to protect her family's well-being. In her terse filings, she painted herself as a caretaker under siege. It was a chilling reminder that malice often dresses itself in righteousness, and that vigilance must never waver. I prepared for the appeal with the same resolve I'd shown at trial, but something had changed. The community no longer bowed to her staged theatrics. When the appellate hearing convened in the grand courthouse with its towering columns, it felt more like a formality than a second chance. Witness after witness recounted how Karen had weaponized fear, and the appellate judges upheld the original verdict in a concise ruling that cited her willful abuse of community trust and malicious defamation of a vulnerable child. I felt relief wash over me, an affirmation that truth, once laid bare, cannot be undone by clever rhetoric. Back on Maplewood Drive, our streets no longer echoed with hushed speculation. Instead, laughter and the soft roar of sprinklers filled the air. Cassie's hummingbird feeder became a popular spot for neighbors to gather, sharing lemonade on warm afternoons while children chased dragonflies across the grass. Through it all, I watched Karen in the distance, no longer the queen of the cul-de-sac but a solitary figure, her once booming voice reduced to a reluctant whisper when passers-by met her gaze. I wondered how she'd live with the knowledge that her greed and envy had cost her everything: her reputation, her power, and the trust of an entire neighborhood. In quiet moments, I reflected on how fragile civility can be when fear and envy are allowed to flourish in the shadows. But I also saw how resilient kindness can be when people choose to speak up, even when it's hard. Our victory was not just a legal triumph. It was a rebuke of entitlement and a testament to the power of community. As I tucked Cassie into bed that night, brushing tendrils of hair from her forehead, she reached up and grasped my hand without a word, and in her unspoken embrace I heard the loudest affirmation of all. We had won more than a lawsuit. We had reclaimed our home. Now, months later, every time I walk down our street and see the hand-painted welcome sign, a humble wooden plank hung from the old oak, declaring Maplewood United, I feel a surge of pride and hope. Hope that no other family will suffer as we did, and pride that when faced with cruelty, we chose courage over silence. Because in the end, justice is only as strong as the voices that demand it, and compassion only as lasting as the hearts willing to extend it. What lessons have you learned from standing up to injustice? Share your story and thoughts below.